The Bengals have their path to the playoffs, but they're going to have to do it with a limited linebacker unit.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. Back together again for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast as we head into the division matchup that will have a lot to say about the Bengals' hopes for, well, the playoffs and winning the division. Before we get there, Joe Bacci, as we all know, tore his ACL. He is done for the year. The Bengals made some roster moves. They made that official. He's on the IR. And in his place, they've called up from the practice squad Keandre Jones, linebacker that's been up off the practice squad for the last couple weeks, I believe, playing special teams primarily. And he is now the primary backup. They also backfilled his spot on the practice squad with another linebacker, Cincinnati kid. James, you have the name?
Oh, I look at you tossing to me there. That's how you tossed? A hell of a toss. No, I'll pull up the name though, because I have the roster moves in my inbox. To Grace Scales. He's a Coleraine High School alum and went to Indiana University. He's been on a bunch of different NFL teams, appeared in 4 games for the Steelers last season, but he's been on the Colts, he's been on the Buccaneers, he's been on the Browns, he signed with the Rams as an undrafted free agent. So to Grace Scales is your newest linebacker on the practice squad. A lot of new faces at linebacker, Jake, over the past few months. Weeks.
I know he also spent some time in the CFL. I remembered all of this about him, and I didn't remember his name, unfortunately. But he'll be on the practice squad. So what does it mean, James? It means that your first 2 linebackers are still probably okay. Jermaine Pratt's been having his best year in the NFL, regardless of what PFF thinks. His play has taken a step up, and it hasn't been perfect. There are still mistakes, but he's been better this year. Marcus Bailey came in for Joe Bacci yesterday, or not yesterday, on Sunday, played pretty well. Past those 2 guys, I don't think there's another Joe Bacci in reserve. Joe Bacci was a guy that in the preseason had his moment for sure. And what I said about him previously when we talked about him was if he gets his mentals right, he can be okay for you. And he had been okay for them. And now the depth is just worse. There is no depth really at this point. When you lose 3-4 guys at a position, it's going to be rough. And that's where the Bengals are.
Yep. So it's pretty simple. Hopefully Jermaine Pratt can stay healthy. Hopefully Marcus Bailey can stay healthy. And I'm going to be honest. I'm curious. I didn't look at everybody's PFF score, and I certainly didn't look at what they had for Jermaine Pratt. Did they rip Pratt or something?
He didn't have a great game according to PFF, and Mike and I are Mike PFF or not PFF. Mike at Bengals_Sands in our film review episode yesterday talked a little bit about one of Pratt's most impressive plays, but we agreed that thought he had a pretty good game. And so I don't really know where the negatives came from for him, but that is for PFF to decide and for us to not know.
Yeah, that's fine. Who cares? I don't give a damn. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're the highest score or whatever. Like it's a good tool. But sometimes it's wrong. And I'll say this: Bengals love what Jermaine Pratt's given them, and so if they get that effort and that everything, because he's now the one with the green dot, he's the one communicating and everything like that, they'll take it. Sign them up for the next 3 weeks. I think Marcus Bailey showed a little bit, and I agree with you. I don't think it's a huge drop off there. I think there's a chance he would have ended up starting anyway at some point and being that second linebacker. And so those 2 guys, fine with, comfortable with, and that says something about Marcus Bailey now. 7th round guy, slowly making his way in, and you look at this linebacking core moving forward, and it probably won't be this way this year at any point, barring something unforeseen from Logan Wilson. But Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, Marcus Bailey, Akeem Davis-Gaither. It's a good quartet, Jake Liscow. So, depth certainly an issue, but the top 2, good enough. And there's 3 games left. Find a way. And I think that's where the Bengals are right now, is they're going to have to try to find a way over these next 3 weeks.
I think there's a little bit of matchup-specific concern that I have. Like, I think they're fine players against generic NFL team. Against the Denver Broncos, I think Jermaine Pratt and Marcus Bailey are fine. That's not a terribly threatening offense. They don't do anything that's, you know, terribly unique, I would say. The offenses they face the next 3 weeks, if assuming Lamar Jackson plays this week, even if he doesn't, Tyler Huntley's shown the ability to run with the football. That's where maybe you miss the speed a little bit that Logan Wilson and Akeem Davis-Gaither gave you. I think that, Jermaine Pratt is a fine athlete. Marcus Bailey's athleticism, I think, has been somewhat diminished over his career by his injuries. He's an okay athlete, but Logan Wilson and Akeem Davis-Gaither, I think, are the best athletes the Bengals have at linebacker. They're guys
Mhm.
that you would like to have against Lamar Jackson, against Patrick Mahomes to some extent, and then against the Browns offense, which is play action heavy. And you know, the, just having more experience in that game could be helpful and dealing with the way that the Browns like to attack Lou Anarumo's defense. So I think there are some like matchup specific things there where yeah, they're okay and they should be fine because the defensive line is healthy, which is a very big point and makes
Mhm.
the linebackers look better. And as long as DJ Reader's in the game, as we discussed a little bit on the film review episode, the linebackers are going to probably look okay, but they do have some matchup specific things coming up where, maybe you would like to have the rest of the guys and they just have to do the best they can without him.
Yeah, I think maybe you do more three safety, you get Von Bell in the box a bit, and Ricardo Allen saw some snaps anyway when Von Bell got shaken up and taken off the field a couple times on Sunday against the Broncos. So maybe that's something they do. But no, I agree with you. Obviously, there's you'd rather have those guys than not. And the Bengals still, I think, have their fingers and toes crossed, not this week against the Ravens, but at some point double nickel 55 Logan Wilson can come back, but to me it just seems unlikely. I just expect him to be out for the year, and then if he's back it feels like a bonus, but that's how I view it. I'm not sure exactly if that's how they view it at Paul Brown Stadium, but either way it's a battered linebacking core, and we'll see if they can patch it together. Lou Anarumo's done a good job, but up next, Jake, let's dive into the playoff conversation with all the possibilities, all the scenarios, which include Lou Anarumo's defense trying to stop Tyler Huntley, who is good. By the way, we're not going to really talk about Tyler Huntley, but you're right. I think he's kind of good. It's weird. He's getting a lot of love this week. But I got to tell you about Super Bowl 56 at SoFi. It's less than 100 days away, and On Location is the official hospitality partner of the NFL. And it's the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. You can select your exact seats, choose from elite experiences featuring an exclusive pregame celebration with NFL legends, get food from the great Wolfgang Puck, and 5-star Los Angeles hotels. Visit onlocationexp.com/SB56 for more information or search Super Bowl On Location. It's onlocationexp.com/SB56 or search Super Bowl On Location.
Certainly something we have to track this week, James, is the status of Tyler Huntley and Lamar Jackson. Tyler Huntley will play if Jackson can't go. The latest I've seen as of 6 p.m. Eastern time or so as we're recording this was a report on the morning of December 21st, which is the day we're recording this, Tuesday morning, that John Harbaugh is hopeful that
Yeah.
Jackson will be able to get back this week. The ankle is getting better. He's hopeful that he'll be able to practice Wednesday when many of you are listening to this. So we'll obviously find out a lot more about the status of Lamar Jackson as practices go on this week. And we'll talk to Kevin in our crossover episode tomorrow to get a feel for if or how the offense changes, which I don't think is very much when Huntley
Mhm.
comes in for Jackson. But that will be for tomorrow's episode, James. Today we take a look at the updated playoff odds and Baltimore losing 3 games in a row, or is it 4 games in a row now? No, it's 3 games in a row,
3.
is not something that I think any of these playoff odds simulators foresaw. The Ravens now in the Football Outsiders model, 1 percentage point behind the Bengals to get into the playoffs, period, and 5 percentage points behind the Bengals to win the division. So, a couple things here. One, I think the Bengals' easiest path to the playoffs is win the division. I think they either way need to win at least 2 of their last 3 games. I don't think winning one more game and 9-8 is going to be enough, but I think any 2 games gets them in. The best way to get in is with a home game, and all they need to do destiny entirely in their hands is beat Baltimore this week and beat Cleveland in week 18. Regardless of what happens in any other game, that wins the division. Obviously, you would like for them to win all three or any two of the three, but to me, that is the clearest cut path. And just beating the Ravens this week moves them up to 75% in the 538 model. But I do
Mhm.
think they're going to need to win two. I don't think that will be enough on its own.
No, it won't. And magic. I mean, I guess it could be if 52 things go their way, but let's be honest. You don't want to bet on 52 things going their way, even at betonline.ag, which is exactly where you should bet. Look, this team, 10 wins, if they get there, they're in. Now, I look at it and I look at these three games, and yeah, 2 of 3 I think is realistic. The Browns are a weird matchup for them, but they should beat the Browns. I'm going to say it now. I don't give a damn if everybody's back. Baker is not as good as Joe Burrow. At some point, the better quarterback needs to rise up. I said it before, and Burrow and the Bengals got their head kicked in. So who knows? Maybe I'm just dead wrong, and the Browns just have the Bengals number and whatever. But that should be a game, given what we know, that the Bengals should win to me. And then this Sunday, they're favored by 2.5, according to betonline.ag. They have the better quarterback. I think that's fair because you're either getting a less than 100% Lamar Jackson, who needs that athleticism, or Tyler Huntley, he's been good and certainly exceeded my expectations against the Packers last week. But it's still Tyler Huntley, and that matters. It just does. So that alone, like you look at it, you're like, all right, well, the Bengals, put it like this. If I'm a Locked On Bengals listener, and thank you for listening, I would expect them to handle business in these two games. Now, knowing what I know about this season, now, the past, the history, all of the stuff that ties into the franchise, all of that, it's like, oh, well, who knows? Maybe the Ravens just find a way, right? Or maybe the Browns just roll over them but looking at it, I think looking at it objectively, 2 of 3 and that loss to potential loss to the Chiefs, I think that's realistic. It gets them the division at 10-7. It puts them probably at the seed they're at right now, the 4 seed. They'd play whoever that is. Maybe it's the Colts like it is now. I think that's doable. How it is right now, I think is kind of a realistic expectation for how it should be in 3 weeks when we look at this playoff bracket, so to speak, and see where they stand.
And it's interesting to look across the AFC North as well, right? Because you're right, there are some scenarios where they can get some help. I'll say this on the 538 machine, if I check win against the Baltimore Ravens and loss against the Browns and Chiefs, the Bengals playoff odds go very, very low, which kind of underscores the idea that they need 2 wins. But you look across the
Yep.
division, and there's probably some weird path where they can get it done by just beating Baltimore, just beating Cleveland, but it gets a lot harder. And the reason I say that is the Ravens have to play Green Bay. Oh, sorry. They just lost to Green Bay? Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. They
Ravens
just
have to
lost to Green Bay.
play LA, the Rams, and they get to host the Rams. So, they have these difficult opponents down the stretch at home. Green Bay was at home. LA is at home. They host the Steelers. Their last road game, in fact, is at Cincinnati this week. The Browns have to go to Green Bay. This is what I was trying to look at. They also
On
have to play
Saturday.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
On Saturday, Myles Garrett didn't practice or wouldn't have practiced today if they practiced today on their fake injury report today. They have to go to Pittsburgh, and then they get Cincinnati to finish the season. So the Bengals schedule, we know the Steelers have to go to Kansas City. They get Cleveland and Baltimore. So every team plays the other divisional opponents. They have 2 division games, and they have either Kansas City or Green Bay or the Rams in the
Yeah.
case
It's tough. Yeah.
of the Ravens. So all of these teams have very difficult schedules and will beat up on each other. So that's where it's like kind of possible where you can see the 9-win scenario play out, but
In
very
more
difficult.
likely in the division, I think, via tiebreaker essentially versus beating all these teams for a wild card at 9-8. Because I mean, really, you look at it, could the Browns beat the Bengals, but then lose to the Steelers and lose this week. Well, now they're at 8 wins, not 9, and it's not enough. And so if the Bengals get to 9, it doesn't matter that they lost twice to the Browns, right? So um, that's just one path, and we could go through all of them. But yeah, I do think that there's a chance that just because it is a tough schedule, like the Bengals, it's a tough schedule for the Bengals the final 3 weeks, but they all have tough schedules. And if you tell me 2 of the 4 teams go 1-2, and then 2 teams go 2-1, just hopefully the Bengals are one of those teams.
And Pittsburgh is a real wild card here, James, because they don't play the Bengals again, but they
Mm-mm.
do play Cleveland and Baltimore. And it would be in the Bengals' benefit if Pittsburgh beat those games for the Bengals in the division. But if the Bengals lose, then suddenly Pittsburgh, with their tie, despite having lost 2 to the Bengals and despite being awful and somehow hanging in against non-Bengals teams this year and winning some games, somehow they're suddenly the AFC North champions. So there's a scenario there. Like they get Kansas City this week, and right now Tyreek Hill
Tyreek Hill.
and Kelsey, I think, are both on the COVID list right now.
I think you're right. Yep.
So I mean, who knows what's
And
happening
so
down the stretch?
that's
And COVID is such a big wild card too, to be honest, when we look at what's happening around the league right now.
it is. And so 2 things there. One, you want Kansas City to handle business this week, and then you want to put your Steelers cape on, Bengals fans, as weird as that sounds, and you want them to win those final 2. Because if they lose this week, they're getting to what? They're at 7-6-1. So they'd be at what, 9-7-1? Am I right?
If the Steelers lose to Kansas City,
They'd be 9-7-1, and they win the next 2. So
if they've won the next 2, yeah, okay.
But then that puts you in a set. Maybe you want them to split depending on who you beat. Like if you beat the Ravens, then you're okay with the Ravens winning. It's tough. You see, now we're getting into the intricacies of it, because you're right. You don't want them to finish 9-7-1 if you're only winning one of the next 3. And so
Gotta
they
win
really
2.
have to, and that's why the playoff odds go bloop and plummet if they only win one out of the next 3, because it's going to be uphill battle to make the wild card. Or if that happens and they only win one of the next 3, one of these AFC North teams, they're assuming, is going to have the tiebreaker, going to have the edge, even if they only have 9 wins.
And one of them is going to win 2 games. The way it's going to shake out, at least one of them, I think, is going to win 2 games, and they're all 8-6 or 7-6-1, because the Steelers
Or
tied the
7-7.
Lions.
Yeah.
7-7-1.
Honestly, though, they tied the Lions. The Bengals lost to the Jets. Like that.
I know.
Could you? No, I'm just saying, if you would have just tied the Jets, how big of an edge it would be. Mike White.
Gonna live in our nightmares.
Mike White.
Let's
taking
talk
flight.
about a tendency, James, that may or may not be a tendency that's garnered some discussion and has to do with the Bengals' decision making late in games. Is Zac Taylor really showing us that he can win 1-score games? Maybe this is just a loud minority on social media, James, but it seems to me there's a sizable amount of Bengals fans that think Zac Taylor's coaching scared. We'll talk about that to wrap up the show today.
Speaking of tendencies, I have a tendency to eat Built bars, a lot of Built bars, at least one Built bar a day. What's Built bar, you ask? They're the number 1 protein bar on the planet, because while the protein packed, they're low in sugar, they're low in calories, they taste amazing, they're covered in 100% chocolate. Need I say more? They're awesome. And I love them. Jake Liscow loves them. You're going to love them. Everybody's going to love them that hasn't tried them. And you can try them right now, and you can save money while you do it by going to built.com, see all the delicious flavors that they have to offer. And here's the thing. If you're watching on YouTube, it's just simple. It's a little bar like this. You can throw it in your bag, whatever. And this one is a caramel almond delight. Look, all you got to do is go to built.com. Use promo code LOCK15. You can look at all their different flavors that they have, load up that cart, and with that promo code LOCK15, you're going to get 15% off. So you could try them. Maybe you want a variety pack. You want to see which ones you like, which ones you prefer. You could do that, but you'll get it right now. You'll love them. Built Bar is the number 1 protein bar on the planet. Again, save 15% off right now with promo code LOCK15 at built.com.
James, one of your big questions earlier this year when we started to talk about, hey, look, Zac Taylor winning some one-score games, and he won a couple of them earlier this year. I think
Mhm.
on the season now, I think he's 3-4 in one-score games. And there's a question out there, which is, we asked this in the preseason: does Zac Taylor actually know how to win close games? And does he know how to close out close games? And there have been times, I would say, this season, in his defense, that he has gone for the throat in the third quarter, established a big enough lead. And there have been games, we had that stretch of games where the starters didn't finish the game because they didn't need to. So you credit him for putting the Bengals in those situations. You credit Joe Burrow certainly for helping to execute the game plan. And there have also been games when Joe Mixon has been enough, or he has iced the game. The running game hasn't been as effective in the last few weeks, but after against the 49ers choosing to run the ball on second down in the red zone, and this week choosing to run the ball on 3rd and 8, people are again asking, does Zac Taylor know how to win close games, or is he coaching scared? And I'm presenting this as a bit of a straw man argument because I don't think it's quite as simple, but maybe you do, James, and I'm curious to get your thoughts here.
Yeah, I think he's a chick. No, I'm just kidding. No, here's the thing. I think Zach is still learning, and he's like, if I had to put it like on a scale, like I think Joe Burrow's ready to win right now, and he's still learning. I think Zach's got a really talented team, probably more talented than we realized coming into the year, and he's doing a lot of good things, but he's still learning. But it's his first time having a team like this that was actually capable of winning, and so he's still learning now. Do I think he's scared? No, I don't. I don't think he's coaching that way or anything like that. Now, being said, we might see that tendency over the next couple of weeks, potentially, depending on what happens. Now that things are on the line, you can get a little tight. I think he got tight against Green Bay in overtime when they should have won that game. You can't get tight against the 49ers like he did, and then admitted not that he got tight, but admitted that he should have thrown the ball. So we do have a couple games and examples there where that happened. But I just think he's more so learning than anything. And hopefully he's learned those lessons and now they can unleash, because we started this episode with the linebackers, right? And questions there. Injuries happen, attrition happens, and I wouldn't be shocked if Tyler Huntley drops 30 on Sunday, or the Chiefs drop 40 on in Week 17, or the Browns go for 40 at First Energy Stadium because they did it the first time. So this offense is going to have to show up. Zach's going to have to show up. He's going to have to call a good game, and yeah, that means running the ball too. But he's going to have to be aggressive at times. But there is a balance, and I think that's something that he's trying to master, and a lot of these NFL coaches don't have.
And it's really hard to do, I think, for a number of reasons. One of them is like if you watch Peyton Manning's detail episode, which everybody should, he goes in depth on Joe
It was really
Burrow's.
good, really
Yeah,
good.
he's fantastic. Obviously, he's Peyton Manning. Like he's going to see things that we don't see because he's Peyton Manning. He's got one of the best football minds of all time, and he's just sitting on a couch talking about the game, putting that brilliance to use. But one of the things that he really talks about is, and everyone in the NFL does this, is setting up your shot plays. And the Bengals did this in this game where they set up their wide receiver leak that goes to Tyler Boyd for a touchdown. I talked about this yesterday, James. I put the back-to-back plays up, and there's some serious similarities on how those plays look to the safeties, to the linebackers, to the defensive line. It's one of the reasons they score a touchdown. There's also maybe an argument that, you know, they're not getting into the right concepts at the right times. In that regard, he's learning. Certainly, Vic Fangio, one of the best defensive coaches in the league, might have outcoached Zach a little bit, right? The Denver defense, for as well as it played against the Bengals, hasn't been invincible this year. They've been really good as a scoring defense, but they've had games when they've given it up, and this just wasn't one of those games. So Fangio had answers for the things that Taylor wanted to do and Callahan wanted to do and Burrow wanted to do. And these guys are all young and they're still going to be learning in that regard for sure. But when you look at the way the game went, They started with early down passing in this game. And I think I talked about this in our post-game show. Their first down passes early in the game, their first down passing plays, 6-yard gain, 2-yard gain, incomplete pass, scramble for 5 yards. Those are their early down passes. It, even into the third quarter before play action leak and not counting the one play they took a shot against prevent to get that field goal going into halftime. So you're averaging what? You have a total of 13 yards on 4 plays. That's pretty bad average yard gain on those passing plays. They're running plays on first down from quarter 1 to quarter 3, specifically against the Broncos, average 6.7 yards per carry. And you look at that and it's like, oh, well, maybe that's why they're running on first down, right? They haven't figured out how to deal with whatever they're getting from Vic Fangio. They're looking at these wide receivers when they do run them downfield and they're clamped. And you watch the all 22 and they were clamped and they haven't figured out how to penetrate it. Well, maybe that's why they're running the ball. And they bust off some big runs in the second half. In the third quarter, their first down runs went for 5, 4, 22, 2, and 12. And that 12-yard run comes one play before the touchdown to Tyler Boyd and directly sets it up. So these are parts of it too, is the sequencing. Now, is there more room there to throw the ball on first down and to not fall in love with running the ball on first down? Because at some point Vic Fangio is going to see that and counterpunch too. Probably. And that's probably a fair reason to question and be critical. Are they calling the right concepts at the right times on those first down passing plays? But for me, the lesson that I learned from this exercise was when I saw a tweet that said, "Oh yeah, in the second half, Joe Burrow threw one pass on first down, and they ran the ball 10 times." Well, at first I'm thinking, yeah, that's probably not a good split. And then you look at it and it's like, oh, okay, I can see why this happened. Just like
Mhm.
you go back to second down in overtime and you see Joe Burrow hurry up to the line and they get a beneficial numbers game on that run to the left side. And even if you disagree with it, you can see why it happened. That running play should have been a chunk play. And they missed a block. And that's the nature of the running game. But I
You're
just
talking about the
think that
49ers game there. I'm just
yeah,
being
sorry.
clear.
Yeah, sorry if I misspoke. But the the point here is it's easy to look at numbers, it's easy to look at percentages and macro trends, but when you take that extra step and you start to look at what was happening in the game, what's the context on that specific play, it's a lot harder for me to draw broad conclusions that Zac Taylor's afraid of trusting Joe Burrow. Like it
Mhm.
situationally, you can certainly spin that narrative, but when you look at the individual plays in the games, I think it can be a little bit harder at times to say that it's strictly an issue of trusting the quarterback or trusting that your quarterback's not going to get hurt by putting him in a passing situation. And it's just more complicated. That's all I'm saying.
Mm, no, it is, and I'll tell you, I don't think Zach has any lack of I think the Bengals treat Joe Burrow like he's Peyton Manning. Like, I think they just put everything on him. Now, there are games where, especially when Brady was in New England, where they knew, all right, we're gonna have to win it with defense and running game. And, maybe our great kicker. And I think that's how the Bengals approached the Denver game. They weren't like kind of how we strength on strength, wide receiver, secondary. I think they were kind of knowing going in, we don't give a damn about that. And we'll find our plays, but we're gonna try to do it this way. And they did try to get the passing game going on early, I felt like. And it didn't. And they're like, fine, we'll play this way. And again, probably starting this Sunday against Baltimore, they're gonna have to score and be more explosive and all of that stuff. I think Zach knows that. And at the same time, uh, the fact that they were able to go to Denver and win, I was more encouraged about that in a game like that where it's ugly, where you have this offensive minded coach that has been accused up until this year, at least, of throwing it too much, got crushed for how much he threw it last year and put Burrow in those situations. So sometimes you just got to escape with a win. And they did. And, so yeah, we'll learn more about Zach each and every week. I'll learn more, and hopefully he continues to get better because we have seen improvement. Now, if they lose the next 3, will I rip him? Probably, because it's going to be on him at some point, I think, because I think they should win at least 2 out of the next 3. So we'll see. But overall, yeah, I'm not willing to say he's coaching scared or anything like that.
You wonder how different the narrative would be if the Jets game doesn't happen, because that one's just like such a weird defensive meltdown that you would expect the defense against to do to the Jets what they did to the Lions, what they did to the Broncos. The Jets offense isn't any better than those two teams. It's
No, it might be
different,
worse.
but it's
Yeah.
not better. And so that's a weird one for sure. And Zach, I'm sure had some influence in decision making on defense there, but that's a weird meltdown on the defensive side of the ball. And then the Chargers game, you wonder, well, maybe if they don't turn the ball over 80 times, there's a different narrative and it's a different game. In the 49ers game, you don't muff those 2 punts. How different does that game look? Right? And so ifs, ands, and buts, or whatever the saying is, right? You can't go back in time, but the point is, I
If
wonder
ands
how
and buts, if ands and buts were candy and nuts, then every day would be Christmas or something like that,
it's almost
or
Christmas.
or
I hear.
snack time. It's snack time every time with Built Bar. Man, I'm like a NASCAR driver without the logos on me.
Just got to start getting them tattooed on your neck.
Man, you hear that, Built Bar? I might do it for a lifetime supply. I'll send you. Well, you guys have my address.
That's a
Semi truck full.
low price, low price for a neck tattoo, James. We're going to learn a lot more about Zac Taylor. He said that he would like to think that coaches can get better too, and he needs to continue to get better because I don't think we've seen enough to know that he's the guy. I think he has to continue to improve. I don't know that we've seen enough to know he's not the guy. And to your point, James, we'll see how these final 3 games of the season go against some good opponents in must-win situations. The pressure has been on Zac Taylor and this team since they came out of the bye, and it will remain on them until the end of the season. We're back tomorrow with Kevin Oestreicher from Locked On Ravens to begin previewing and looking ahead to what the Ravens will bring to Paul Brown Stadium for the Ravens' final road game of the season. Until then, Bengals fans, hoo day and have a good one.